see this little car passing you, you assume it's just some small, Nissan sedan. It's actually the Nissan Maxima, and it's actually retiring this year. That's right. Nissan is officially killing off the Maxima, their full-size sedan. And I think this is actually kind of scary and dangerous. Now, I know you may think that I might just be one of those automotive clickbaiters where I say, I'm going to chop off my head because X, and I think this is really dangerous and sets a bad precedent, yada, yada, yada. I'm not here to say that. I have many different points to say than that, right? So before I get into the depths of why I think it's being retired, what mistakes Nissan made, and what precedent this sets in the automotive realm, let's just take a brief history, right? So this is the 2010 Nissan Maxima. Now we can see in 2010, much like the Toyota Camry, the Nissan Maxima showed off Nissan's next generation styling. In the late thousands, Nissan had this kind of bubbly, friendly, nice styling. Their cars were experimenting with CVT transmissions, and Nissan was getting a little bit more explorative than usual, exploring new technology, and new technology. That's pretty much what they were about. Seeing how good they can make their cars, seeing how good they could make their CVTs, and seeing how much people what they really want out of their daily driver. So, in the late mid-thousands, you had the Altima, and then in 2010, they refreshed the Maxima and gave it this new fresh look. Now, you can see, compared to the 2010 Nissan Altima of the time, the Maxima looked more stern, it looked more luxurious, and it was showing off some of the blunt but smooth styling that Nissan had planned for the mid-2010s. You can definitely see a lot of Nissan styling influence in this car, and if you look close enough, you can even see some Infiniti styling. Now, of course it had that weird Nissan steering wheel, but I actually think if I was had a gun to my head, and I had to buy a used Nissan, I think I would definitely buy the Maxima. I mean, it's a good car, it was bigger than the Altima, and it was luxurious enough where I think I wouldn't mind it too much. It was just a good car, Now, early on, you can definitely see the difference between the Altima and the Maxima. The Maxima is more luxurious, right? The Maxima is the full-size sedan. Meanwhile, the Ultima's a little bit smaller, it's a little bit lighter, it came in a coupe. It was supposed to be the sporty one, right? So your sporty daily driver is the Ultima, your luxurious grandpa car is the Maxima. And I actually like the Maxima a lot more than the Ultima. In fact, one of my close family members back then, when I wasn't driving, was actually looking for a car, and a Nissan, because they were a Nissan person, and I said, why didn't you give the Maxima a try? Now, let's look back to 2005, right? We can see that, before it was updated, the Nissan Maxima shared a lot of the styling cues with the Altima, even sharing a similar grille. I like to point out this little feature there, so you can see how it has that wide band of Nissan logo. They were proud of this vehicle. It featured a powerful front grille with weirdly side-pointing fog lights. Very interesting design choice there by Nissan. But you can see just this front, strong, powerful, silver, strip that went down the front of the car. And if you look in the Altima, you can actually see a little hint of that style element with these two little bump outs signifying exactly where that metal strip would be. You can see that the Maxima was the more fancier, slightly more sportier version, right, of the Altima, and that the Maxima was just ever so slightly bigger, and that Nissan was proud of this. It featured Infiniti-like styling, an interesting driving position, and a hideous steering wheel, like most Nissans. Some people are a fan of their steering wheels. Steering wheels don't really matter that much in the end. I happen to think they're really ugly. That's just me. So, yeah, this was essentially the Maxima in 2005. Now, the Maxima, you may think, was just some recent car that Nissan whipped up, maybe in 2005 or 2004, but it's actually been out since 1980. That's right. The Nissan Maxima has actually had a very successful past as being Nissan's full-size sedan. In fact, this competed with the Camry back in the glory days of the Japanese great automotive fight, right? So, I'm going to explain this in different eras, right? So this car, the Maxima, was perfect for this era. This was when the Camry, the Accord, and the Maxima, all Japanese small cars, had finally beat the American companies, and after they had beaten the American companies in reliability, durability, and price, now they needed to beat out each other. Nissan didn't end up winning. Toyota did with the Camry, as it was the best-selling car forever since 1999. No, since 2001. And I think so. 2001. One of those years. It's been the best-selling car ever since then of its class, right? So, yeah, The Camry obviously won, but the Maxima was also a close second. I would actually say that the Maxima was pretty close to the Accord, and I would buy a Maxima over an Accord any day. Mainly because of the airbags, but, we'll get to that in a while. We'll, in a different episode, because I talk about it enough, I might as well make a video on it. So the Maxima was essentially their full-size sedan, right? They had the hybrid wars after this, and Nissan went full EV with the Leaf, which I think was actually a pretty good decision. The Leaf features some Nissan styling, which I'm not really a fan of, but hey, it was great for its time. It was an amazing vehicle, and they're easy to find if you want an EV, so I'm not going to shit on the Leaf too much, right? So the Maxima was just this small little sedan thing, and it was very, very nice. Now, let's talk about, now that we've had our brief history lesson, 2010, right? I showed you the design elements. I showed you the luxury. In 2015, Nissan saw the American car companies faltering to sell their sedans. They saw sales were down for the Fusion, for the Malibu. They saw that something big was going to come for their sedans. So they updated the Maxima to make it look more styling and, more sportiness. Hopefully draw in some new buyers while leaving a luxury interior for the elderly community. This, I think, is where Nissan went wrong. It looked more like a rental car and less like a car that I would actually want to drive, right? The interior was cheap and plasticky, and even though they went to great attempts to make it feel luxurious, in the end it just ended up feeling plasticky. A lot of people didn't like the interior, and this generation of Altima, I believe, was one of the single-handed reasons why it was discontinued. The sales went up slightly and then down, Nissan tried. And in the end, it wasn't that people didn't want, that's a common misconception. People still want sedans, they just don't want poorly built sedans. That's, again, what Nissan did. In the early 2010s, I may not have liked their styling, but they were certainly built a lot better than in the 2015s, where Nissan just said, hey, we don't care how it's built. We care about how it looks, which is why it has this modern, nice, plasticky styling. I mean, it was an okay car. There was nothing really wrong with it. It just wasn't as good as the competition. And so that brings us to modern day. Back in 2020, Ford discontinued the Ford Fusion because people weren't really buying it. Right now, as of this year, Chevrolet is going to be soon to discontinue the Malibu. That's right. Chevrolet, the Malibu is going to be gone. 2025, they don't have any plans. It's going to stay the exact same. Chevrolet is just going to say, you want to know what, Malibu? We had a great run. You're not selling anymore. Out the door forevermore. And I think the Nissan Maxima being discontinued is actually kind of bad. You want to know why? Because it sets a precedent for Japanese vehicles. Before the Nissan Maxima was discontinued, it was mainly just the American car companies that were flushing out their sedans. Ford stopped selling sedans altogether, moved more to SUVs. A while ago, like in 2020, I believe, Chevrolet also discontinued the Cruze hatchback, a lot of their sedans in favor of SUVs. And during that time period, because sales were down, sales were actually up for Japanese sedans. But Nissan killing off the Maxima has now brought that spread of car companies car brands, top-tier sedans being killed off to the Japanese market. That's right, for the first time ever, we may see some Japanese sedans, being discontinued. That's right. Now, another disconcerting thing, Toyota's already done this. That's right. You may think that, Toyota is immune and that Toyota hasn't killed off the Camry, when actually they killed off the Avalon. Now, Toyota didn't do it the same way Nissan did. They didn't just say, bye, Avalon, forget it, you never existed, we're just canceling you. No, they transformed the Avalon into the Crown, right? So, I think this proves all the furthermore exactly what mistake Nissan made. Toyota went from having the Avalon be sporty with, the sport trims and all that jazz, to making it luxurious and bringing it the name Crown. The name Crown didn't come over, just because Toyota thought it sounded cool. They did this intentionally. They got rid of the Avalon so that their top-tier sedan could live, right? They sacrificed one to save another. This car, this brand new Toyota Crown, is Toyota's top-tier sedan, but they've given it some SUV-like features, so people that are more into SUVs will buy it. Elderly people that want something more luxurious will buy it because it has a plenty nice interior. And overall, it's just a really good car, and Toyota did an amazing job refreshing it. I really think it looks amazing, and I'm glad that we finally got it in America, right? So instead of just discontinuing their sedan like, Nissan did, Toyota said, we're going to have one last hurrah. And the Toyota Crown is going to be the precedent, right? The precedent setter, right? If this happens twice, that means it's officially going to happen to mostly every single car company. Because think about it, if Nissan just continues the Maxima because sales are down, that can just be that people don't like the Maxima. But if Toyota does it for their models, that's going to send a message to Honda and all the other Japanese car companies that your sedans might be discontinued soon. Unless you do something like Toyota did and transform it into something else. So I'm really sad to see the Maxima be gone because I actually like the Maxima. I'm not a Nissan person. I think their CVT transmissions are a little corny, but I think the Maxima looks fine. It doesn't look bad. It looks actually quite classy. I like the silver, right? I like the styling of it. It looks a little bit sporty. But let's get back to that Toyota Crown, right? So let's look at the trim levels of the Maxima. The SV, standard value, the SR, sport version, and then the Platinum. So you have your regular, you have your sport, and then you have your nice one, only being about $1,000 difference between the SR and the Platinum. Of course, with their standard mushy CVT. So, Nissan went for sportiness with this car. They tried to take the luxury out of it. You can see in 2015 they specifically did that, and they styled it more like the Corolla, right? Blue with a lot of silver to make it look sporty but also refined. And Toyota also did this, but with the Corolla, right? The Corolla was fresh, the Corolla was new, and Toyota knew that they had big plans for the Corolla. If you want to see that, watch my video on why the Corolla hybrid is perfect. But Nissan, instead of going like Toyota did with the Crown, intentionally, they took the Avalon from just being sporty, right, they're sporty, and making it luxury, completely switching it over to luxury. You see, people may not like sedans anymore. I think that's a blanket statement. A lot of videos are about people don't like sedans because they don't like sedans. They don't like sedans because of how poorly they're built. But if that was the truth, then why did the Toyota Avalon get changed over for the Crown? That wasn't just a whoopsie-daisy decision, that was intentional. Because when car companies see a car that's failing like Nissan did, Nissan is, again, they have a lot of intuition. They saw the Maxima, and they said, we see this trend with the American car companies that their big full-size sedans are starting to fail. We're going to go to sporty, right? Teens like sporty, young people like sporty, and if we make this failing car, this slower selling car sporty, then the mere fact that it's sporty, it'll start selling itself, and the numbers will go back up, hopefully, and if it doesn't, we'll just have to discontinue it. Toyota sees that if you want something sporty, the people that buy sporty vehicles usually don't have the money to buy something fast and fun and sporty. Toyota realized that if you have the money to buy something like a Maxima, starting off at $38,000, probably have the money to buy a Crown, right? Something more luxurious. Toyota realized that the people who are actually buying these mid-size sedans, didn't want something sporty. They wanted something that looked sporty and felt like luxury. And that's why the Crown is here. It does both of those things perfectly. On the exterior, you can have your fun, sporty, classy red, but there's also that classy in there. It looks classy and sporty at the same time. The ride feels more like a Lexus with having all the power that you need, and it's a hybrid, so it's also economical. Toyota's giving the Avalon, or the Crown, the best shot it has to succeed, even launching it with a wagon, the Crown Signia, which I am just over the moon about. I mean, the Crown Signia, that might be my next new car. I mean, wow, it's great. But so this is exactly where Nissan went wrong. Just like most other car companies, they didn't want old buyers. They threw them to the wayside, and they said, we're going to make it sporty because people like sporty cars, and if we make our most expensive car sporty, people will buy it. And then once they did that, it just became unaffordable. And the people who used to buy the Maxima said, hey, I don't like that new sporty styling. I'm going to go buy a Toyota. I don't like the CVT. I'm going to go buy a Toyota. And Toyota saw this happening. And even Toyota and Honda both know, even though Honda doesn't really have a full-size sedan. I guess you could argue the Accord is kind of that. But, I mean, be honest, Honda doesn't really have a Crown of their own. The Civic the Accord is really the top sedan. Even Honda and Toyota know that people even though the reason why they don't like sedans is because of their build quality, they still know that sedans are not as popular as they used to be for reasons outside of their control. Trends, sportiness, crossovers, the rise of hybrids being hatchbacks. They all know that, right? And I think I commend Toyota for giving this its best shot, and I'm really sad to see the Maxima go. I think what Nissan should do, they have enough money. They're obviously partnering with Honda now, which is going pretty well. They already have the Aria developed. They developed their own EV basically from scratch, which is amazing. And if they have all that money, I would say they should redo the Maxima one last time, one last hurrah, see if it'll sell, and if it doesn't, fine, discontinue it. But the Maxima has such a heritage that if it gets erased, that's going to be sad. And the trend of just creating new cars, like Ford with the EcoSport. The EcoSport was in 2005, so they just created a new model and gave it that name, right? It's not the same car, but it has the same name, ergo it has the same history. Same with Chevrolet bringing the Trax back, even though the Trax has nothing to do with the original, right? And also there's pop-up cars like nothing, like the CHR is a nothing car, because it didn't exist until about 9 years ago. The Grand Highlander just got created this year, has no brand history. So these long-term sedans, like these long-term models with years of history dating back to 1980, these big, nice cars with a reputation are being killed off and being swapped over with something like the BZ4X, which has only existed for a year. These long-name cars are getting discontinued and thrown by the wayside just for newer cars that don't even have a history. And I'm sad to see that because I think the history is a big, important part of the car, right? If I know that this car was built well in the 1980s, I think it's more likely to be built well now. If there's zero history about the car, there's only been one generation and that generation was like 10 years ago, then I'm going to be a little bit leery about buying that car because I don't know the history because it doesn't have one, right? So I'm sad to see another long-term car with a bunch of history get discontinued just because the company made a mistake and can't see that. So with that solemn note, thank you for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all so real soon.